Hello, and thank you for tuning into Town Meeting TV coverage of Town Meeting Day 2025. My name is Romeo von Herman, and this program is part of a series of budget presentation candidate forums hosted you so much. And if you are tuning live, we also welcome your questions at 8028 to 623966. And if you call in, we'll do our best to prioritize your questions, though we will screen all calls to ensure that questions are not repeated. We'll go ahead with the budget presentation. However, if you want a town manager.
Sure.
Okay.
So we do have a fiscal year 2026 proposed operating budget, and we will briefly touch on the 2025 town meeting ballot items that are on the ballot. This year, the select board had a few goals when we were taking the budget that was handed off from the manager and department heads to the select board. We gave the guidance that we wanted to limit the operating budget tax increase to a minimum amount. However, we didn't want to give an artificial, keep it at 5%, 6%. We really wanted to see what the town needs to operate and use that as our starting point. So the goals this year, we were meeting the needs in the area of capital funding. This has been a repeated conversation at the select board, the importance of funding capital. Also ensuring cost-effective and efficient operations within the town, specifically within repairs and maintenance for fleet, which does have an impact and relation to capital funding. And also more programming space for parks and recreation, specifically with the Essex Free Library, and also Memorial Hall was a topic of conversation. So some general fund highlights this year. The proposed budget will keep municipal services intact. There were some challenges this year. Health insurance premiums, as they do every year, they rise. Depending on the employee's selected plan, this year they are increasing by 9.89% to 11%. So that was one of our challenges. Inflation, as it does in your household budget, inflation continues to drive up many costs, from contractual increases to our internal staff, contracts, construction supplies, vehicles, pretty much everything within our budget. Supply chain issues, we continue to have a challenge with the extended time period for major equipment replacement for vehicles to arrive after they're ordered. And also police patrol officers are again budgeted at 90% to better reflect historical spending, primarily due to staff shortages. The general fund budget does include some cost savings and efficiencies. Essex Junction will continue to contribute toward the police and assessing services based on contractual and shared services agreements. Capital transfers from the operating budget are reduced this year to $216,000, down from $470,000 in FY25. $250,000 of fund balance, which is also, our surplus from the prior fiscal year, is being used to cover capital costs. And the voters will be asked whether to increase the capital tax by 2 cents this year to ensure the ongoing health of our future capital funding and making sure that that remains intact. Also, strong interest rates allow the town to generate revenue. That's budgeted at $350,000 this year. Moving along, more general fund highlights. There are a variety of staffing changes that are proposed, including the Essex Free Library, an increase of 5 additional substitute hours per week. So essentially an eighth of an FTE. There will be no impact to benefits, but it will help with programming and staff coverage. The Community Development Administrative Assistant is proposed to become a planning technician. This would increase the hours from 28 to 40 per week, and that does include benefits. It's an increase of about a third full-time employee. This will also better assist with the transition that was made last year by charter change to move toward a development review board model. It will include some increased staffing to support those activities. Within Parks and Recreation, a 28-hour per week programmer is funded through the Rec Department, through the Rec Program Fund. This would become a 40-hour position with the added third of an FTE coming from the general fund. Allocations of personnel costs between the general fund and Rec Program Fund have been updated. And in FY25, the assistant director position for Parks and Recreation was eliminated and replaced with a Parks Maintenance Superintendent to better align with the needs within the department for staffing and planning. The fire department budget includes additional shifts for per diem firefighters, increased pay rates for volunteers and per diem firefighters in an effort to provide better emergency services coverage and response. This does include a fund balance of $90,000, which will be used to offset the tax rate by paying for one-time expenses, including $40,000 for a recreational needs assessment to better identify the needs from a recreation department based upon the needs and programs requested by the community. $45,000 for 3 pedestrian crosswalks on Route 15, and $5,000 for Chittenden Area Transportation Management Association, or CATMA, transportation study, and this falls under economic development. As previously noted, $250,000 of fund balance will be used to offset the reduction of capital transfers. And another one of our goals was to use one-time funds, cover one-time expenses with fund balance so that we're not adding to the operations side of the house and using fund balance to fund ongoing expenses, because eventually we fund balance, again, for the recreation needs assessment, CATMA study. This comes to $29,979. We do have vehicle purchases for $37,000. Traffic control, $21,800. Green Mountain Transit, our assessment increased from last year to by an amount of $21,093. And our technology subscriptions and licenses, this mostly falls within the realm of IT, $20,213, which brings us to a net of other increases and decreases, total $45,179 for a net increase in the operating budget of $423,202. It should be noted that the figures above do include the $163,660 of human services funding, which is 1% of the proposed operating budget. Human services funding has historically been included in the town's operating budget. However, in FY26, for FY26, this town meeting day, we will have a separate question on the ballot for the voters to decide whether they want to fund the human services program, which would add 1% to the budget. Which brings us for a little bit of a deeper dive, human services funding. The history here, since 1987, the town of Essex has allocated 1% of its general fund budget to fund human services organizations to benefit the community. The amount has been included as part of the general fund. For FY26, the 1% for human services will be a separate question on the ballot. So the actual budget question on the ballot does not include the 1% in human services funding. This change is being made to better adhere to case law, legal guidance, to be more transparent, and essentially let the voters decide. So our proposed 26 budget, and you'll see that we've broken this out without human services and with human services, just to give the full picture on, if the human services question passes, what the amounts will be. If it doesn't, again, what those amounts will be. So the total proposed budget without human services, $16,365,963. Adding in the human services funding would bring it to $16.529 million. This is without human services. This is a change from the prior fiscal year of $259,542. When we add in the human services funding, this amount changes to $423,202. Without human services funding, the percent budget change is 1.61%. With it, 2.64%. The estimated tax levy change without is 4.11%. With human services funding, 5.54%. This does estimate an increase in the grand list of 0.75%. This has been included in the tax rate. It's slightly higher than the 3-year average of 0.67%. Also, the estimated tax rate change without human services funding, 3.33%, and with it, 4.74%. There are also some tax rate change differential due to non-tax revenue sources. It's increased with the sharing of police and assessing services. Essentially, the City of Essex Junction shares at 50% the cost of police, also shares assessing services. And then also the operating transfers to capital projects are being reduced by $254,000 for FY26. So the estimated tax impact, which is probably the biggest question that people have, what is this going to do to my taxes? So you will see that we again have it without human services, with human services, just to show that difference. Obviously, in FY25 that was included, so the rate was 0.7061. Without human services, we are proposing an estimated rate of 0.7296 without human services. With it, it would bring it to 0.7396. As previously stated, without the human services included, this is a 3.33% change without, and with it, 4.74%. The average residence with a value of $280,000 without human services included would see an annual change of $65.80. If we bring in the human services funding, should the voters approve it, that would increase the annual change to $93.80. Again, there are some assumptions at the bottom here. This is assuming an average residence of $280,000, grand list growth of 0.75%, use of $90,000 from fund balance, and also the tax rate above does not include the capital tax rate of 3 cents nor the local agreement rate. This is typically 0.002 cents. So your tax dollars at work. I believe this is based on an average home, if memory serves, $2,155 annual fee.
Total estimated taxes are about $2,127.
Oh, I apologize.
So
Yep, I was remembering from the notes in the PowerPoint that I saw like an hour ago.
Just so I understand, these human services, is it just a general service provided to the people, or?
We do have a policy and a process by which external entities can request funding, and there's a pretty involved scoring process. What's the benefit to the community? How much is requested? And then the committee that handles that scoring then comes to the select board with a recommendation on how to break out that $163,000 or whatever the 1% of the operating budget is for that particular year.
And these are organizations, endowments and stuff?
Solid at this point. They're warned for the ballot.
Okay.
But for an average home of $280,000, the total estimated taxes would be $80,000. The total estimated taxes would be $2,127. So this slide shows the breakout of the services that you would receive for those dollars, for that $2,127 a year. You can see it's broken down by general government, police, fire, public works. So this is everything from plowing the roads, paving the roads, to police protection, fire response, EMS services, all of the general government, the select board, the manager, the town staff, fleet vehicles, everything included. And I must say that I think that residents of Essex are getting a lot of value for their dollar. So there are some other ballot items that aren't specifically related to the budget. So in addition to the FY26 general fund budget, town meeting ballot will include these additional items. We did speak about the human services funding, which is breaking out that question of whether the voters want to include the 1% of the general budget for that purpose. There's also a proposed increase to the capital tax rate. There are 7 proposed charter changes, and as we do every year, we have elections. So the human services funding, this is Article 2 on the ballot. Shall the town of Essex vote to appropriate an amount equal to 1% of the general fund budget as passed by the voters to the Essex Human Services Contribution Fund to support social services organizations, such amount being reasonably necessary and for the support of programs to benefit the town. So yes, this will be a standalone question. If the general fund is approved as proposed, the human services appropriation would equal $163,660. Capital tax. So essentially, currently the capital tax is at 3 cents. This would add 2 cents, bringing the capital tax to 5 cents overall. The general fund budget typically includes transfers to the capital fund. Proposed transfers were reduced this year, as we said, by $254,000 compared to FY24 and 25 levels. Funding decrease is offset in 26 with the use of fund balance. To make up the difference in future years, the town would need to raise the capital tax or put money back into future general fund budgets. So the general feeling here is that we're trying to separate capital needs from operating needs so that we can better fund each for the purposes of transparency, but also so that all of these combined, otherwise we would be in the negative in FY30. So we are doing our due diligence and planning years out to put us in a better position.
Right, so this is more like being proactive rather than reactive.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Charter changes. Based on the work of the Charter Review Committee, the Select Board has put 7 proposed charter changes on the town meeting ballot. Article 4 is to provide a clearer description of the role of the town moderator. Article 5 is to change the timing of approval of Select Board minutes to better align with the realities that there may be changes to minutes, and it's not feasible to dictate that they will be approved at the next business meeting. Article 6, amending the charter to change appointments made by the Select Board and Town Manager. Essentially, this just tweaks some of the positions, whether Greg appoints them and we approve of that decision, or whether it's a Select Board appointment. Mm-hmm. Article 7, this is requiring mailed notice to residents regarding the availability of the town auditor's report and annual report. Article 8 is to amend subchapter 10 to be a replacement of the language to change it to the Department of Real Estate Appraisal to align it more with the work that is currently being done and the roles and responsibilities. Article 9, remove the description of transacting business for annual meeting 2 years ago.
That's, yes, 2 years ago.
I think it was 2 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun. The town voted
It says something about Australian voted. What does that mean?
Yes. So Australian ballot is you going and filling out a ballot. Previously, our budget was voted on by voice vote.
Oh.
And prior to that, all of business, most business,
yeah.
was transacted during the annual meeting, where everybody's in a room, voice votes. 2 years ago, it was changed to the budget, moved to the ballot. Mm-hmm. So this is just, again, aligning our charter with current state and how business is transacted. Article 10, these are just de minimis changes that include wording, formatting, spelling. There's no substantive changes. They're mostly grammar, spelling. And then elections. We do have our moderator, which is a one-year term. There is one seat. There are two positions for the select board that are up for election this year. Those are 3-year terms, and there is an opening for the Champlain Water District Commissioner, which is a 3-year term. And that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate that, really. It's very, 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 very insightful. And these budget changes in terms of the taxes, are you getting any responses so far before even get into the ballot? Are people receptive to it? Items that are here, giving the voters the chance to kind of dive into what they're actually voting on.
Yeah.
You know, and how long does it take the process to put this up together and deliver for them in time for voting? Is it a
Well,
long
the
process,
budget, we had, and this is after Greg worked all of his magic with staff. The select board had our first, call it budget day. We just get in a room and walk through the
just walk
entire
through.
budget with all department heads.
Okay.
That was on November 14th, and it's been a constant, it's been a regular placeholder on our agendas since that point.
Wow, wonderful. Greg, do you want to say anything?
Even before that, the select board, we ask them each summer in August usually what their goals are for the upcoming budget. So that's what Tracy started with. Those are some of the goals that came out of that meeting. Staff takes that back, puts together a budget proposal that goes to the select board in November. But really, we start this process midsummer and to build up to today and to town meeting.
That's awesome.
And some of the charter review changes, depending, you asked about timeline, those have been in the works for 2 years, 2.5 years. We've had a committee working on charter changes. We had several that were approved 2 years ago. And then this is another follow-up of the work that they did and the select board carried on. So depending on what's on there, yeah, years worth of work.
That is awesome. Is there anything else you want to say directly to your residents, Essex residents directly?
Please come out and vote. We always want to hear from people. Tracy mentioned our select board meets typically the first and third Monday of each month. This month's a little bit different with holidays. Town meeting, we're having an informational hearing on Monday, March 3rd. The polls will be open on Tuesday, March 4th at Essex Middle School. Please come out and vote. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Tracy, to select board members, to myself if people have questions. We do have a lot of information on our website, and we're always looking for feedback and input and always available to answer questions.
Perfect. Thank you to both of you. I know this is very interesting. This is my first time hearing the Essex Town. There's Essex Town and then there's the Essex Junction. Is that a city or town? Because I'm always confused. There's two right next to each other.
That is now a city.
Okay.
The city of Essex Junction used to be the village of Essex Junction,
Okay.
which was part of the town of Essex.
Okay. That is quite interesting.
It's been a journey.
Right. That's amazing. Well, I thank you both for the presentation, and I think it's been very in-depth, and I know you went through a lot of numbers. I'm not a numbers guy yet, but thank you, both of you. Thank you to everyone for watching this important TV presentation, and thank you for tuning to Town Meeting TV on the ongoing coverage of local candidates, budgets, ballot items. And you can find this and many more like it on cctv.org/TMD2025 or on Town Meeting TV YouTube channel. Don't forget to cast your ballot on Town Meeting Day on or before March 4th, 2025. Then tune in to Town Meeting TV for the results and recap of the show of the evening. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.